annual meeting is a spirit of dialogue. It is really my hope that the week ahead and the year ahead will chart collaborative pathways forward for business and government, and shape a more prosperous and secure era. I'm now pleased to introduce the co-chair of the World Economic Forum and chair and CEO of BlackRock, Larry Fink. Welcome, Larry.
Good morning, everyone. And it's a great welcome to be a part of this annual meeting at the World Economic Forum, which is the strongest session that we're going to be ever having in our 56-year history. This week, as Borge suggested, 850 CEOs and chairs are here, 65 heads of state representing governments, representing actually 40% of the world's population. And alongside, we have some of the world's most innovative entrepreneurs, some of the world's most innovative startups, and we have some of the most impactful civil society and NGO representatives. In fact, we believe that outside the United Nations, this is the largest gathering of global leadership of the post-COVID period of time. So thank you for being a part of that. But now we have a harder question to ask all of us. What do we do about it? And will anyone outside this room care what we're doing here? Because if we're honest, for many people, this meeting feels out of step with the moment. We hear all about the elites. And how does that play out in an age of populism? How does an established institution make a difference in an era of deep institutional mistrust? And there's some truth to the critique. I believe in this forum for a long time. I certainly wouldn't be leading this if I didn't believe that we can change and make the world better. But it's also obvious that the world now places far less trust in us to help shape what comes next. If the World Economic Forum is going to be useful going forward, it has to regain that trust. And there are some very obvious ways that we can improve for ourselves and hopefully for the world. We need to make sure that we widen who gets a voice in these conversations over the coming week. We have to be a lot more transparent and more engaged with people who don't feel represented in rooms like this. And because this is the World Economic Forum, to be more precise about what does it mean about economic success. Prosperity just isn't the growth in the aggregate. It's not just GDP. It can't be measured by GDP or market caps of companies. It has to be judged by many people who see it, who can touch it, can feel it, and can build their own future on it. That, in my view, is the strongest critique of the last economic era. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, more wealth has been created than in any time prior in human history. But in advanced economies, that wealth has accrued to a far narrower share of people than any healthy society can ultimately sustain. Now we're in the era of AI, which we're going to talk about a lot in this week. And are we going to replay the same pattern? Early gains are flowing to the owners of models, owners of data, and owners of infrastructure. the open question, what happens to everyone else? If AI does to white-collar work that globalization did to blue-collar workers, we need to confront that today directly. It is not about the future. The future is now. Now with abstractions about the jobs of tomorrow, but with a credible plan for broad participation in these gains. This is going to be the test. Capitalism can evolve to turn more people into owners of growth instead of spectators watching it happen. And that kind of change is truly hard, especially in a world of competing ideologies and assumptions about how the system should work. Which brings me to the second way Davos can change who gets invited to these conversations. This forum cannot be an echo chamber, and we should want panels where everyone doesn't always agree. We need panels where we can have true conversations, maybe some overt disagreements, but through that, we can have a deeper conversation. And then we can have maybe deeper understanding of each other's views. You can already see the shift in who is here this year. That doesn't mean the goal of everyone to leave having convince themselves that they're right. The objective over the week is not agreement, it's understanding. It's sitting with people who disagree with you, taking their arguments seriously, their viewpoints seriously, and being willing to admit they might be right, or they might have something that will help you evolve your opinions better. And there's a deeper challenge. Many of the people most affected by what we talk about here will never come to this conference. That's a central tension of this forum. Davos is an elite gathering trying to shape a world that belongs to everyone. That is why this year's theme is the spirit of dialogue, because dialogue is the only way a room like this can earn the legitimacy to shape ideas for people who aren't in the room. And besides, the world needs some more good faith conversations with people who don't typically talk to one another. I think that most people, at least intellectually, know that finding a common ground with a stranger is a hopeful thing. It restores your faith in humanity a bit. But how often does it actually happen? Hopefully a little more happens now. But how often can we make it happen? Because dialogue, especially the listening half of dialogue, is what the World Economic Forum needs in going forward. We need more of it. For 56 years, the World Economic Forum has been synonymous with Davos. And that's likely to remain true for a long while. But you should also see the World Economic Forum start doing something new, showing up and listening in places where the modern world is actually being built. Davos, yes, but also places like Detroit and Dublin, or cities like Jakarta or Buenos Aires. We need the mountain to visit everyone, to be a part of everyone's life. So in fact, that's why I agreed to take on this role after Klaus Schwab, whose more than a half-century of work, together with an extraordinary, dedicated group of men and women at the World Economic Forum, made this gathering possible. There was an opportunity to make this forum more transparent, and I thought this was the surest way to rebuild trust. When people can see in the room about the debates, about the participation, and about the conversations, and maybe a lot more understanding. That approach may fail in other gatherings. In this one, it's going to work. Because for all the caricatures of this forum, the people who come here, the people I know, aren't here to congratulate themselves, aren't here to pat themselves on the back. They're not here to protect their own comforts. The people I know are here for something bigger than themselves, bigger than their organizations that they represent. I believe an economic progress should be shared. All of us at the Forum believe that economic success should be shared. And we believe institutions like the World Economic Forum still matters in making things happen. So let's remember this during the week about real conversations. Let us all commit to listen, to learn, to understand. And if we can all do that, we will all be better for that. Thank you. And now my co-chair.
Thank you, Larry, for that very powerful message at the opening of our annual meeting. Now it is my pleasure to introduce our other co-chair, Andrea Hoffman, and I would also like to use this opportunity to thank both of the co-chairs for their leadership during the last three-quarters of a year. Andre Hoffmann, you know Andre, many of you, he's our co-chair, but also the vice chair of Roche. So, Andre, the floor is yours.
Your Majesties, Excellencies, distinguished forum partners, ladies and gentlemen, it is now also my turn to welcome you here in this meeting placed under the spirit of dialogue. At a time when science confirms that humanity has already transgressed 7 of the 9 planetary boundaries, as highlighted in a planetary health check in September 25 from the Potsdam Institute, the challenge before us is no longer one of just awareness, but of action, making the need for collective responsibility, decisive leadership and meaningful dialogue more urgent than ever, as Larry just underlined. For over half a century, leaders from across the globe have regularly gathered here in Davos, in Switzerland, to confront the defining challenges of our time. This was done as a community bound by shared responsibility for our collective future. This tradition, born from conviction that the great questions facing humanity demand dialogue against their differences, has never been more vital than it is today. At a moment when the world confronts profound questions about growth, about innovation, about technological transformation, and about our planet's future. At a moment where we need spaces where diverse voices can be heard, where we need just and safe places where diverse voices can be heard. At a moment where complexity must be examined from multiple perspectives so that we gain the insights we desperately need. This is why the World Economic Forum exists. Since 56 years, it is the international organization for public-private cooperation. A space where government, businesses and civil society come together and generate the insights that emerge when different worldviews actively illuminate one another. And this matters because in a world that feels increasingly divided, progress depends on our ability to listen and engage across differences. Could I ask my wife to give me the third page, which I left there? As you can see, you can be prepared, but also a bit clumsy in delivery. Sorry about that. This is why our gathering... This is why our gathering takes place here in Switzerland, a nation whose tradition and commitment to dialogue reflects the very spirit we seek to embody. Davos has over so many years almost become, as I said before, a synonym for the World Economic Forum. It is therefore a particular pleasure for me to welcome Monsieur Guy Parmelin, President of the Swiss Confederation, as the opening speaker here in Davos. Bonjour, Monsieur le Président de la Confédération. Je vais vous demander de venir sur scène. Merci beaucoup. Merci d'avoir accepté de partager vos réflexions avec nous.
Thank you for accepting our invitation.
Parmelin has been a member of the Swiss Federal Council for over 20 years. He initially led the Federal Department of Defense, Civil Protection and Sport, and since 2019 has headed the Federal Department of Economic Affairs, Education and Research. Mr. President, when you were inaugurated as President by the Swiss Parliament last December, you chose to speak about dialogue. At a time of uncertainty and tension, you reminded Parliament that Switzerland's diversity is not something that sustains itself automatically. It only becomes a strength if we truly listen to one another, if we resist the temptation to dismiss different views simply because they come from another political camp. You emphasized that societies do not move forward through value judgment on others, but through respect for those who think differently. Diverging opinions, you argued, are not an obstacle, but a driver of progress and a source of genuine innovation. This understanding of dialogue, rooted in listening, proximity, respect, and a shared sense of responsibility and humanity, is one that deeply resonates here in Davos. It also reflects the value of the World Economic Forum. Talk and listen to each other, embrace other options, and act in a collective interest. The spirit of dialogue. Before inviting the President to speak to us, allow me also to express our deepest gratitude to the Swiss government, to the Swiss Parliament, to the Canton of Graubünden, to the Swiss Army, and to the police. A special thank you goes to the community of Davos and Cloisters for their decades of exceptional hospitality and partnership. And above all, our thanks go to the people of these communities whose openness and commitment truly embodies the spirit of Davos and the spirit of Switzerland. Your Majesties, Excellency, distinguished foreign partners, ladies and gentlemen, it is a particular pleasure to invite now le Président de la Confédération Suisse, Guy Parmelin, to address us. Thank you very much, Guy. The floor is yours.
Je vais parler français. Monsieur Hoffmann.
I shall speak French. Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Fink, Mr. Bende, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. My quality as President of the Swiss Confederation, I'm particularly happy to welcome so many heads of state to this annual meeting of the World Economic Forum. This is particularly meaningful in a year which started with a tragedy for our nation, and Switzerland would like to thank all of the nations concerned for the support and solidarity they expressed during the disaster in Crans-Montana. It is extremely impressive to see how energies can be mobilized by such a disaster, how it can strengthen international cohesiveness and unity. This must go beyond, of course, the particular or dramatic events. It must pervade the relationships between our countries, because it is only together that we can find solid and lasting solutions to the major challenges of our time. 2025 offered up a number of challenges: geopolitical, economic, and digital upheavals on a global scale. They can be seen everywhere. They permeate our daily lives and even extend to the World Economic Forum, for which the past year was not a walk in the park. This edition, with its many distinguished guests, attests to the importance of resilience and dialogue in the bedrock of our institutions and their ability to cope. 2026 has barely started, yet there are indications of upheavals to come and potential flashpoints. Ukraine, Gaza, Sudan, and now Venezuela and Iran, to name but a few. In terms of economic policy, protectionism is on the rise all over the world. In addition, There are many unresolved issues about the role and control of artificial intelligence that remain unanswered. This should come as no surprise. For humans, standing still is not an option. Or to quote philosopher Henri Bergson, to exist is to change. This year will be marked by technological advances, as well as economic and security concerns. The rapid rise of AI is set to deeply transform the fabric of our societies. The changes it brings will be visible at every turn and in every area of human life, the economy, government, in our day-to-day lives. They're changing the way we work, communicate, and make decisions. As such, they present both risks and opportunities. Digital transformation will bring the dangers of cybercrime, disinformation, but also exciting prospects, particularly in the field of healthcare. Technology is never inherently good or bad. It is what we make it. And to make it a positive ally, its users must have a deep sense of responsibility. Change is not just a matter of speed. As Economic Affairs Minister trained in the School of Life, I'm well placed to explain that lasting success depends on early and forward planning. This is a rule that applies to many other sectors, where investments do not generate immediate returns. I'm thinking of research, which also falls under my remit as minister. Long-term thinking is necessary in any situation. It is particularly necessary in times of upheaval. It can help us to drive progress while remaining true to our fundamental values, without forgetting their meaning or their role. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Switzerland draws its strength from the consistency that helps to ensure political stability. Consistency is not a source of stagnation. On the contrary, it is the foundation of progress. Our country is fortunate enough to have an excellent education and research system with a capacity for innovation that recognized far beyond its borders. With its open, export-oriented economy, Switzerland is an integral part of the global economy. The Federal Council is deeply committed to ensuring that our country can continue to participate successfully in the vitality of that economy. One of our current priorities is to stabilize and expand relationships with our most loyal and significant partners. Switzerland also wishes to continue to diversify its international relations, particularly in the areas of trade and science. Even in the current climate, which is prone to protectionism, we believe in the success of free trade and wish to continue expanding our networks of agreement. To achieve this, we must be able to conduct negotiations on an equal footing, yielding good results for the benefit of all parties. Agreements of this kind, which are mutually beneficial, don't happen by chance. We have the ability to build them patiently, one step at a time. Personal contacts and a willingness to engage in dialogue.
Particulièrement exigeante en présidant l'Organisation pour la sécurité et la coopération en Europe. Mais la force diplomatique de notre pays réside également dans sa pratique reconnue des bons offices, à laquelle la Genève internationale offre une scène à la mesure des enjeux en présence. Il faut savoir la Suisse toujours disponible à cet égard. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, nos différentes positions nous offrent des perspectives imprenables sur l'évolution de notre monde et sur les dangers qui le guettent. Elle nous offre aussi la hauteur de vue et les liens nécessaires pour que ces changements puissent être abordés avec les moyens adéquats et de façon concertée. Société, sciences, économie et politique doivent en effet interagir dans une logique de partenariat, sans quoi les problèmes ne pourront être abordés que de façon partielle et imparfaite. J'ajoute qu'il faut savoir faire preuve de courage pour s'investir dans une tâche de cette ampleur, fidèle à ses valeurs. Le courage de demander assistance ou conseil si nécessaire, le courage enfin de s'engager dans la durée comme le fait le vigneron face au rythme lent et implacable de la nature. Nous verrons ce que l'intelligence artificielle a à nous offrir. Nous serons certainement encore stupéfaits, peut-être éblouis, mais ce qu'elle ne parviendra jamais à faire, c'est à fédérer les cœurs ou à attirer les mains secourables comme nous l'avons vécu au début de cette année en Valais. La solidarité et l'humanité ne font pas partie du vocabulaire digital. Je veux y voir un heureux présage pour l'avenir. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. President, and also on behalf of the World Economic Forum, we send our warmest thoughts and condolences to the people affected by the tragic fire in Crown Montana. Ladies and gentlemen, it is really my great honor to welcome one of the most influential and respected leaders on the global stage today. President Ursula von der Leyen, a stateswoman whose leadership has helped define and shape Europe's direction in an era of historic uncertainty. Madam President, you have guided the European Union with clarity, resolve, and strong sense of purpose through some of the most demanding moments in history. Under your leadership, the European Commission has advanced a bold agenda for strengthening Europe's competitiveness with upholding its core values. As President of the European Commission, you have championed a Europe that is competitive yet fair, open yet resilient. On the global stage, you have been a clear and consistent voice for multilateral cooperation, support for Ukraine, and a rules-based international order. At a time when leadership is tested not only by crisis, but by choices made for the future, your voice offers both direction and reassurance. Please join me in welcoming President von der Leyen. Madam President, the floor is yours.
President Brende, dear Borge, thank you very much for the warm welcome. Your Majesties, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, indeed, it is now 56 years since the first meeting here in Davos. And the idea of the founder, Klaus Schwab, was to create a platform to discuss the issues and the ideas of the day. Of course, the world has transformed completely since 1971. But the original idea of Davos has remained, as we just have heard in the speeches. So I was delighted that you have gone back to your roots with this year's theme, a spirit of dialogue. Because this spirit is all the more important in a world that is more fractured and more fractious than ever. 1971 was the year of the so-called Nixon shock and the decision to delink the US dollar from gold. in an instant the foundations of the Bretton Woods system and the entire global economic order set up after the war effectively collapsed. But it also had two major effects. It order, and it provided a sharp lesson for Europe and on the need to strengthen its economic and political power. It was a warning to reduce our dependencies, in this case, on a foreign currency. The world may be very different today, without any question, but I believe the lesson is very much the same. That geopolitical shocks can and must serve as an opportunity for Europe. And in my view, the seismic change we are going through today is an opportunity, in fact, a necessity, to build a new form of European independence. And this need is neither new nor a reaction to recent events. It has been a structural imperative for far longer. So when I used this term, European independence, around a year ago, I was surprised at the skeptical reactions. But less than 1 year on, there's now a real consensus around this. The sheer speed and almost unthinkable scale of the change have driven this, but the underlying imperative is still the same. The good news is we acted immediately, whether on energy or raw materials, defense or digital, we're moving fast. But the truth is also that we will only be able to capitalize on this opportunity if we recognize that this change is permanent. Of course, nostalgia is part of our human story, but nostalgia will not bring back the old order. And playing for time and hoping for things to revert soon will not fix the structural dependencies we have. So my point is, if this change is permanent, then Europe must change permanently too. It is time to seize this opportunity and build a new independent Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, this new Europe is already emerging. On Saturday, I was in Asunción, in Paraguay, to sign the EU-Mercosur trade agreement. It was a breakthrough after 25 years of negotiations. And with it, the European Union and Latin America have created the largest free trade zone in the world, a market worth over 20% of global GDP, 31 countries with over 700 million consumers, aligned with the Paris Agreement. So this agreement sends a powerful message to the world that we are choosing fair trade over tariffs, partnership over isolation, sustainability over exploitation, and that we are serious about de-risking our economies and diversifying our supply chains. And that will not stop in Latin America. Last year, we reached new agreements with Mexico, Indonesia, and Switzerland, our host country. We're working on a new free trade agreement with Australia. We are also advancing with the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, the United Arab Emirates, and more. And right after Davos, the next weekend, I will travel to India. There's still work to do, but we are on the cusp of a historic trade agreement. Indeed, some call it the mother of all deals. One that would create a market of 2 billion people, accounting for almost a quarter of global GDP, And crucially, that would provide a first-mover advantage for Europe with one of the world's fastest-growing and most dynamic continents. Europe wants to do business with the growth centers of today and the economic powerhouses of this century, from Latin America to the Indo-Pacific and far beyond. Europe will always choose the world, and the world is ready to choose Europe. And ladies and gentlemen, this reality also reflects the fact that Europe has all the assets it needs to attract investment. The savings, the skills, the innovation with our AI factories and gigafactories and the application collectively these assets to their full potential, and to focus on the essential. So focal point number one is to create a conducive and predictable regulatory environment. We live in an age where capital and data can cross Europe in a second, and business must be able to move just as freely. But as things stand, too many companies have to look abroad to grow and scale up, partly because they face the new set of rules every time they expand into a new member state. So while on paper the market is of 450 million Europeans open to them, it is far more complicated in reality. And that acts as a handbrake on the growth and profit potential of companies. So this is why we need a new approach. We will soon put forward our 28th regime. The ultimate aim is to create a new, truly European company structure. We call it EU Inc., with a single and simple set of rules that will apply seamlessly over our union, so that businesses can operate across member states much more easily. Our entrepreneurs, the innovative companies, will be able to register a company in any member state within 48 hours. Union. And ultimately, we need a system where the companies can do business and raise financing seamlessly across Europe, just as easily as in uniform markets like the United States or China. If we get this right, and if we move fast enough, this will not only help EU companies grow, but it will attract investment from across the world. Which brings me to the second focus, investment and capital. We are now building the Savings and Investment Union. We need a large-scale, deep and liquid capital market that attracts a wide range of investors. And this will allow business to find the funding they need, including equity, at lower costs here in Europe. We have made proposals on market integration and supervision to ensure our financial market is more integrated. This covers trading, post-trading and asset management, as well as driving innovation and making our supervisory framework more efficient. This will help ensure that capital flows where it is needed to scale-ups, to SMEs, to innovation, to industry. And the third priority is to build an interconnected and affordable energy market, a true energy union. Energy is a choke point for both companies and households. And just look at the dispersion of prices across European electricity hubs. Europe needs an energy blueprint that pulls together all the parts. This is our Affordable Energy Action Plan. We are, for example, massively investing in our energy security and independence with interconnectors and grids. This is for homegrown energies that we are trying to promote as much as possible, the nuclear and the renewables, to bring down prices and cut dependencies, to put an end to price volatility, manipulation and supply shocks. But now we have to speed up this transition, because homegrown, reliable, resilient and cheaper energy will drive our economic growth and deliver for Europeans and secure our independence. Ladies and gentlemen, whether on trade or business, capital or energy, Europe needs an urgency mindset. Our starting point is good. We are home to global